Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Good morning, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a very special Morning Dew edition of the Dew Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
At the start.
I just want, before we get ripping, JR here thinks it would be a good idea for us to have RBN on to discuss their beef with Black Power Media. Have you ever heard the term not qualified?
Yeah.
If ever people were not qualified to delve into a topic, it would be us.
Yes.
On that topic.
I did think to myself, what's missing from this dispute is the white perspective.
That's it. That's what people are clamoring for.
People are itching to hear that.
Everyone's dying to hear what the two Jewish guys have to say about this internecine battle between two major black channels on YouTube.
We have, at the start of today's show, 179 strong in the YouTube chat, 180 strong in the Rumble chat. How about that? The Dew Dissidents audience telling big tech to suck their big tech. How you like that? Right. Very nice to see a crowd filing in everywhere. We're up to 214 in the YouTube chat.
It's mostly Hamas over there.
Yeah, exactly. 185 in the Rumble chat. Thank you guys all very much for being here this morning. We have a lot to get to today, a lot to talk about. We had a great time last night with everybody who showed up to our patron exclusive stream. That was for Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers. That was a great time had by all. We got done fairly late. We got done at around 10:30, and then we had a quick turnaround for the Clopen, as we say.
Yeah, man, I was hanging out with that chick from the Cinnabon after closing.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you about that offline.
Yeah, Russell's got
that one is a freak.
Yeah, not much sleep. Not much sleep for Mr. Dobular here. Doing a little all-nighter there. But, yeah, we have a lot to get to today, a lot to talk about, obviously, much going on. And so why don't we get right into things? There is some news. Obviously, we are going to talk a lot about Israel-Palestine on the program today. But here's a little follow-up segment to something that we did a couple of weeks ago. Seems like an eternity, right? Seems like a simpler world, a more innocent time when Jamal Bowman pulled the fire alarm. But now he has been charged with setting off false fire alarm. The New York Times reports the congressman from New York set off the alarm in the Cannon House office building last month as Democrats were stalling for time to read a spending bill. New York Times reports prosecutors in the District of Columbia on Wednesday charged Representative Jamal Bowman, Democrat of New York, with setting off a false fire alarm in a House office building last month in an episode that added to a day of mayhem on Capitol Hill as Congress rushed to avoid a government shutdown. Mr. Bowman will plead guilty to the single false fire alarm charge and has agreed to pay the maximum fine of $1,000, according to Gabriel Shaglo-Rubenstein, a spokesman for the D.C. Attorney General's office. Any charges will be dropped in 3 months if Mr. Bowman provides a formal apology to the Capitol Police and pays the fine, as is standard with such charges. The charges come about 3 weeks after Mr. Bowman was caught on video setting off the alarm during a vote on the House floor. At the time, Democrats were stalling for time to raid through a hastily put together Republican-written stopgap spending bill to avert a government shutdown that was to commence in just hours. Mr. Bowman was accused of intentionally pulling the alarm to cause a delay, but he claimed it was accidental. Quote, I'm thankful for the quick resolution from the D.C. Attorney General's office on this issue, Mr. Bowman said on Wednesday in a statement responding to the charge. I am responsible for activating a fire alarm. I will be paying the fine issued and look forward to these charges being ultimately dropped. Mr. Bowman also said he was grateful that the Capitol Police General Counsel's office agreed I did not obstruct nor intend to obstruct any House vote or proceedings, but no such determination was made public. The Attorney General's office does not handle obstruction charges, which are felonies. Congressman Bowman was treated...
Well, not only that, that goes to intent. They wouldn't issue a judgment like that.
Right. Congressman Bowman was treated like anyone else who violates the law in the District of Columbia. Yeah, Mr. Shanglo Rubenstein said in a statement. Based on the evidence presented by Capitol Police, we changed the only crime that we have we charged the only crime that we have jurisdiction to prosecute. But let's take a look here. A Capitol Police affidavit states that security footage shows Mr. Bowman trying to push open one side of the exit door. When it did not open, he tried the other side, which did not open either. He then turned to his left, looked at the fire alarm, and pulled it. Okay, so if we remember, what Jamal Bowman's story is that he was trying to get out of the building so he can get to where he had to get to vote, and the door wouldn't open. And so once he realized the door wasn't opening, he pulled the fire alarm in the hopes that it would open the door that wasn't opening. And according to this New York Times report, his story seems to be true, right? Like when I read this report, I thought, well, there's an affidavit saying that he was trying to get the door open, struggling with the door, and then pulled the alarm, and then presumably struggling with the door some more before ultimately leaving. I didn't see the video. And if you only read this, you would come away with the idea that, yeah, this must have been an honest mistake. I mean, Bowman is the guy who's most likely to make a mistake like this. That's why I always had it in my mind. Maybe he's telling the truth because he's that clownish to the point where if there's any guy there who would make this dummy mistake, it's him.
Yeah, his stupidity is the only thing that gave any kind of plausible deniability here. You say, well, this guy's such a fucking moron, maybe. But no, I always thought he probably did it. Because he's a principal. He's a principal. That's part of your training. You have to know how fire exits work. I never bought this. And now, look, this is a trivial matter, and that's part of why we led with this today. These are dark times, and most of our stories are not quite as trivial as this. But if you look at the New York Times report, that is a much bigger matter because here you're seeing in black and white why you cannot trust the news.
Well, let's show that.
Because what they're saying here has no relationship to what you're about to see in this video.
Right. So here's the actual video, right? They described the video as corroborating Jamal Bowman's story. Hey, it was an accident, right? I tried to get the door open, then I pulled the fire alarm, and the door still didn't open. Here's the actual video. You tell me if this looks like a guy struggling to get a door open and then hoping that this fire alarm would open the door. Here's the video itself. That's the video that they described as Jamal Bowman goes to the door, tries to get it open, and then pulls the fire alarm. Here it is one more time. First of all, that sign made the rounds on social media, a sign talking about, hey, if the door doesn't open, pull the alarm, wait 30 seconds, and then see if the door opens again. And what people realized when watching the still, because they released a screenshot of this, is that those signs weren't on the door at the time. So if you see, he takes the sign off. Looks like he takes the sign with him. Mm-hmm. And the screenshot that they published was like that, pretty much, where there was no sign on the door. Now, we didn't realize at the time he's holding one of the signs, and one of the signs is on the floor behind him. But if he were actually trying to get this door open, this video would look like this. There would be a struggle to get the door open on one side, struggle to get the door open on the other side. What's going on? Look around. Okay, is there something I'm not doing? Oh, fire alarm. If he were dumb enough to think, hey, maybe this will work.
Maybe that's the
Close the fire alarm, and then he would go back to the door and does it open now. He'd be trying to get out. He's not. Look, he walks up to the door very casually. First of all, it doesn't look like he's in a rush. Taking his time. Yank. Walks away.
Okay, and understand, this motherfucker is such a dumb, fundamentally stupid person. I mean, I think the reason he pulled down the signs was in his mind so that to give himself an alibi later that the signs weren't there. So he didn't know what the doors were. Like, why else would he remove the signs? It doesn't make any sense. What he's got too much blank space on his walls at home. He needed that to take that sign with him. So that's what I think his logic was. Oh, yeah. Well, officer, somebody removed the sign. I didn't realize what this door was. How stupid do you have to be to think that's going to work?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And here he is talking to reporters when asked if he did this on purpose.
You did not have any intention to slow things. I mean, Democrats were trying to stall this vote on the House floor.
Yeah, hell no. I mean, when I ran into the Capitol, I went to go vote, and someone told me go downstairs. There's a meeting, so I didn't even know that meeting was taking place for the motion to I forgot what the vote was, but yeah. So no, absolutely not. Hell no.
The stopgap spending bill.
Appreciate it.
Pretty big vote.
Yeah, didn't even know about it. I had no idea.
The confusion that it caused, and I really hate that, Capitol Police and other resources had to be used to respond to this. So I'm really apologetic about that, and I'm going to inform Capitol Police of that. I really hate that part. I'm glad no one was hurt or nothing like that took place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's very concerned. Yeah, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And of course, a lot of the people who are very upset about the prosecutions of January 6th are pointing out, well, that's what they were prosecuted on, right? Interfering with an official proceeding. That's what he did. Clearly, he interfered with an official proceeding on purpose.
I mean, when you watch the video, he clearly did it on purpose. I mean, the video clearly shows he did it on purpose. And that's one of the things, man. You read that New York Times piece. If you didn't watch the video, you would believe what he was saying.
Right.
It's an honest mistake.
Right.
Sworn affidavit of him pulling at the door and then yanking the fire alarm. Obviously, the picture they're painting there is that, he was trying to get the door open and he thought the alarm would open the door. Right. Well, even that doesn't excuse doing it. That's why they reported that there's still a fine. It's a misdemeanor, but there's no intent there. What the video clearly shows is, first of all, he didn't look like he was in a rush. He just very casually walked up, took the signs down, pulled the alarm, walked away. He didn't even try to open the door again after he pulled the alarm. Once he pulls the alarm, he just walks away. He didn't even try to get the door open a second time. Here, let me put this up one more time. Sorry, I cleared this out. But let's just look one more time. If you watch, goes up.
He goes
door.
back and to the left.
Yeah. Look. Well, after he pulls the alarm, he just leaves. He doesn't try to open the door.
He's not trying to get out
after pulling the alarm. If he thought that alarm was going to open the door, he'd have pulled the alarm and gone back to the door
to get out. Right.
No.
So, I mean, this just shows you why all the libs that you talk to are so out of touch with what's actually going on, because this is their news, right? That's why when you say to them, that was a betrayal not to vote to raise the minimum wage, they're going to go, but the parliamentarian, they couldn't do it because the parliamentarian, because they read this shit, man. And all the framing tells them what the establishment wants them to know. Again, this is a very trivial thing. To me, the biggest implications of this story are the way the New York Times reported it. Look at that. What does that say about how they report everything? Look at how Orwellian that is. Don't believe your eyes. Don't believe. There's video out there, but no. No, this is what happened. And then the libs are supposed to go away feeling like the Democrats represent the rules and the norms. That's exactly how Hakeem Jeffries spun it. And this is not like January 6th. He is being held accountable to the law, and this was an innocent mistake. No, it wasn't. Clearly, it was not. So So what? Hagar the Horrible gets sent off for on a 20-year sentence, which thankfully was commuted.
He got 5, but some of them have gotten well over 10.
He didn't get. I thought he got a crazy sentence.
He got like 5 or 6.
I mean, five is crazy too.
5, yeah, of course.
But they commuted it though, right?
Yes, they commuted
let him out.
Yeah.
All right. So why isn't he going to jail? He interfered with an official proceeding.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, when you set that precedent, this is what happens, right? I mean, this is how those games all tend to work. And so if there's one thing that came out of this...
And this is, just before you continue, this is something, a lot of the right commentators are saying, and they often say when things like this come up, and they're right. Can you imagine if this were a Republican, what the media would be saying? They're right.
Oh, of course.
They're right.
It'd be everywhere. Not just the media, but
they'd
social
be showing
media,
that
libs,
video
over
and over and over again. He should be thrown out of Congress, right? This, no. Yeah, no, it was a mistake.
Yeah, honest mistake. And he admitted it, and he's sorry, and he's paying the fine, right? But, the thought that I had, because, there's a lot of talk now somewhere in the Democratic Party about, possibly swapping Joe Biden out for Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or one of these. And then you have an organization like No Labels, which is talking about running a unity ticket with, a centrist Democrat and a centrist Republican, like a Manchin-Romney kind of ticket. I think a unity ticket, that would be a great unity ticket in the wake of this development. One Democrat, one Republican would be Jamal Bowman and George Santos. I think they should run as a unity ticket. I think they could really bring the country together. I even made up a crude sort of proof for their campaign poster with the logo design.
We figure if Peter Daou can keep getting hired.
Yeah, tell me what you think of this. Bowman Santos, 2024. We didn't do shit. That would be their slogan. I think that's something that could really heal this country right now.
I think it could bring us
together. Put their differences
together.
aside. I think a Bowman Santos ticket would be amazing.
I mean, if one of them were to become morbidly obese, I would say they'd be a perfect symbol for the nation.
Yeah, there you go. Well, maybe a press secretary.
Yeah, man. That would definitely reflect the national character better than any other ticket out there right now.
So there you have it. That's my pitch for a unity ticket. Now that the Cornel West campaign doesn't seem to have momentum, RFK is a non-starter. Maybe this is the best we could do.
I mean, honestly, when you look at what third party and independent efforts have coughed up, that's actually better than anything that the left has produced, sadly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks.
I bet Bowman's a jazz man.
Who knows?
Who knows? A jazz man, maybe a hip hop man.
Yeah, well, he's done some rapping before on on some of the rallies and stuff like that, right? Didn't he do one? I forget what it was for, but yeah, he's actually pretty good. So there you go.
Is he?
Yeah.
All right. So, hey,
Pat Donahue,
a degenerate liar for a new generation.
Yeah. Thanks for the €5. How naive people like me were about Daou. His excuse for leaving is cringeworthy. West was duped, as were left activists. Time to go back to the Greens. You mean he going back to the Greens? He's not going to go back to the Greens.
He's not.
No. And I don't think they'd have him back at this point.
They're going to make him get a trans running mate to take him back.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $2. Daou has left the building. Mission accomplished. Yeah, there are a lot of people who say, "Hey, look at what this timeline, how this unfolded." Right? He comes in, takes Cornell from 17 state ballots to 0, party infrastructure behind him to no party infrastructure behind him, and then resigns. All right, my work here is done. All right, I tanked the campaign. I guess that's it. Right? I guess I don't have to stick around any further. Not a bad theory. In that segment. Is coming up next. We are taking Rumble Rants today. We are without Jake this morning, so I will do my best to put them all up on the screen. If Peter is on your team, it's going down. That's a good one. I like that play on words there. That's a little pun. So thank you for that. And then
you should tweet that to him. He's very busy defending his honor on Twitter right now. On X,
indeed.
Whatever we're calling it this week.
Thaddeus Mason, thumbs up. I hit the like button and dropped this. Here, you can have it. Thank you for the $5, my friend. Appreciate that. That is very kind of you, folks. Let's hit that like button wherever you are. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. And let's see if we can get a crowd in here, wake people up on this Friday morning. We need to really juice the algorithm for the morning shows because there is not as big a YouTube audience around bright and early on a Friday morning. Christian Fortin, thank you. I'm living in Senegal, and I'm going to subscribe. You guys jazz. I like that. We don't rock, we jazz. Beautiful. Thank you.
We are nothing if not jazz men.
We are nothing if not jazz men. That is correct. All right, let's get on to this story here. Obviously, this is a big one this week in domestic electoral politics, at least in our space. Cornel West actually announced formally on his Twitter that Peter Daou had resigned from his campaign. I am very sorry about the resignation of brother Peter Daou based on his health. I sincerely pray for him and his precious family and thank him for his service to my campaign. Now, Peter Daou resigned from the Marianne Williamson campaign because of his mother's health. That was the reason he gave. And then he now is resigning from this campaign for health reasons that Cornel West cites. So I took a look at Peter Daou. This was in response to Dr. West's tweet. Thank you, Brother West. And then that is attached to this other tweet that he fired off. I'm soul tired of human violence and brutality. I'm soul tired of the U.S. enabling and supporting it. My PTSD from growing up in Beirut under constant bombardment is being, hold on, that's just the quote tweet, is being triggered in a big way by this genocide. I'm going to take time off and pray on everything. Links to obviously some, horrific news, obviously out of Gaza that, we've all been dealing with. And so, I obviously don't fault him for, feeling triggered by that. But the thing is, man, look, I don't want to be an asshole here, but we're all triggered by that. I didn't grow up in war-torn Beirut, and so I wouldn't want to minimize that experience. I'm sure this is hard on him, assuming this is the real reason why he left, which is doubtful because he gave a similar excuse for why he left the Marianne Williamson campaign. But I'll just look, for argument's sake, for the sake of not being an asshole, I'll take this on face value, okay? Let's say this is really upsetting and you need time off. Isn't the Cornel West campaign supposed to be a revolutionary campaign? Aren't we supposed to be fighters in the face of horror? Don't we buck up and fight back in the face of this horrible violence and war and, yes, genocide? Like, aren't we supposed to fight that? We're not supposed to retreat and do self-care like the campaign manager for an insurgent campaign, a third-party campaign that's really challenging the system. Don't you have any more fight in you than that? And if you don't, then maybe you shouldn't have been running the campaign in the first place, which is what we said. Now, that's if you take his words at face value. I just think, obviously, look, I don't know if Peter Daou is a parent or not. I know he grew up in, a war-torn nation. I don't know that he's a parent or not. I'm not sure. I don't know his bio very well. I tried looking into it. There's not much out there, which makes sense there wouldn't be. I mean, he's not a particularly famous person. He's a, political operative. But look, I have 2 4-year-old kids. Every single time, without fail, every single video or image that I see of an injured child or a maimed child or a dead child or a child crying over a dead parent, a mother or father, I always think, every single time, what if that were my kid? What if that were my family? What if I died and my kid didn't have me? Or obviously, like, these are horrible thoughts. These are very triggering thoughts. These are very upsetting thoughts that I wrestle with every single time. I don't have the life experience that Peter Daou has, but yeah, no, it's not. This is not easy for any of us here. I can't say because this is upsetting to me, I'm just not going to do the show anymore until this is over because I have to wait it out because it's too hard on me. Like, why have the show? Why have a platform if you're not going to use the platform to speak out against this stuff? And so, to me, that is just a very weak excuse, and that's giving him the benefit of the doubt, which quite frankly I'm not sure he deserves, but we'll get into that later because he fired off some very indignant tweets in response to criticism. But before we do that, do you have anything to add to this first part?
Yeah, so Daou is either an op or a crazy asshole. It's one or the other. Frankly, I'm inclined to think crazy asshole, because he says too many things that if they were running him as an op, they wouldn't want him to say. He takes too many positions they wouldn't want him to take. But hey, man, I could be wrong. That could be part of his cover. I don't know. His behavior is so weird, though. I mean, maybe it's some of both. Maybe he's a crazy asshole they're running as an op. I don't know. But it's very strange that he keeps getting these gigs when he's never succeeded at anything other than pissing people off on Twitter. What has this man accomplished?
Right.
Like, what has he ever done that has been successful that you would say, you know what, we're in a tight spot? Call Peter Daou. Like, why would this be the guy that you would call? It doesn't really make any sense.
Right.
In regards to what you're saying, this came up a little on the Patreon stream last night. It was getting late, so I didn't chime in too much. Yeah. Look, I'm from the street. Do I think a lot of what passes for the left are a bunch of fucking pussies? Yeah. Yeah. When you look at a lot of history of the left, it is not or the successful left, whatever you think of some of the outcomes, and I've been critical of it. The people who went on the Long March, I don't think they have the term self-care in Chinese. I don't think they have a term for that, right? Yeah, it's all of this fusion of kind of pop psychology kind of phrasing and ideas that got into, you really have to take care of you. No, you know what? Sometimes you have to be compartmentalized and repressed to get through certain things. You actually do. Is it the best thing for you? I don't know. I don't think anyone could argue that these ideas of self-care and being good to yourself, I don't think anyone could argue that they haven't become much more culturally prevalent over the last 50 years. How many people are on antidepressants now as opposed to then? How many people are struggling with mental illness now as opposed to then? So you can't make an argument to me that as these ideas have become more prevalent, we have better mental health outcomes. We have far worse mental health outcomes. And I will grant you that's a correlation versus causation thing. You can't say that's what created it. But I think you can definitely say it hasn't helped. These ideas haven't really helped in the end.
Well, if you look, I mean, obviously these were much, much lower stakes. It's almost comical to bring up in this context, but it is good for something. When Liz Warren dropped out, she, withheld her endorsement from Bernie because she said, well, I need self-care. I need time to heal from this. If you actually, if you're running for president, as Cornel is now running for president, if you believe these times are very dire and dark, as I'm sure Cornel understands, as Warren probably understood in her own superficial way, I mean, those times are, that was pre-pandemic. That was, there was not this Israel-Hamas war going on. There wasn't the Ukraine war going on, right? I mean, those times, we look back at those times and think, simpler days, right? But at the time, she thought the stakes were high. If you don't think the stakes are high, you don't get in the game. If you get in the game, it's because you think the stakes are high, and you have to fight through that. That's what a campaign is. That's what a third-party campaign is. That's what we need. I mean, now that RFK has taken his support for Israel and amplified that exponentially to the point where now his support for Israel is not just the standard Zionist take, they have a right to exist, they have a right to self-defense. I mean, that would be bad enough in this context if you're not emphasizing the suffering on the Palestinian side. But he's going beyond that. He's saying now we get China, Iran, Venezuela. Now he's full-throated in support of World War III. At this point, Cornel is the only real anti-war candidate in the race with any significant polling support. And so it's on you to fight that fight. And if you can't do it, then yeah, you should resign, which he did. But that's part of why we were saying you shouldn't have this guy around in the first place. The guy is a career troll. He's just an unreliable, unsuccessful, incompetent troll. That's giving him the benefit of the doubt that his reasons for leaving were sincere. But a few hours later, a lot of people suspected that, this was if not outright sabotage, at least not a coincidence. Oh, everything this guy touches turns to shit, right? And I tweeted out, I said, so Peter Daou started the Cornel West campaign. When he came onto the Cornel West campaign, Cornel had ballot access in 17 states and the infrastructure of, not a major party, but a major third party at least, backing him. Now, after Peter Daou, he has no campaign manager, no ballot access, no party infrastructure. He has nothing now. I mean, Cornel West has a website now. That's all he has. There is no campaign right now. So after Peter Daou comes in, tanks the campaign, and leaves, citing health reasons, people give a little pushback, and he lashes out here. Meanwhile, this guy just said a few hours ago he needed to take time off to go pray, right? But apparently, Peter Daou always has time to stir up shit on social media. Truth. To armchair Twitter quarterbacks who keep questioning my motives, here's a reality check. I saved Cornel West's campaign. Like I just said, when you got there, he had ballot access in 17 states and the support of the Green Party.
Peter Daou.
You're leaving, he has nothing.
He's the My Lai massacre of campaign managers.
Yeah, right.
He has to destroy the village in order to save it.
Exactly. Russell, get ready. I saved Cornel West's campaign, and Marianne Williamson's for that matter, from financial insolvency and complete internal disarray. I created solid infrastructure, stabilized finances, built effective teams, encouraged unionization, and led both candidates to their highest poll numbers in the race. Importantly, Dr. West's tweets, statements, and political strategic decisions were entirely his own. And frankly, it's repulsive to suggest...
Get out the identity politics shield, quick!
Of course.
Identity politics activated! Boom!
And frankly, it's repulsive to suggest a black man of his intellect and stature is not making his own decisions. My only policy role was to help refine and launch his platform, written by his policy director, which has received praise from many quarters. He goes on. Excuse me. People who spew BS about me and don't have the slightest idea sorry, I got to get rid of this, actually. My bad. This logo's in the way. The mess I inherited at the Williamson and West campaigns and the tireless work I did to get both campaigns on track to challenge the duopoly at a toll to my own well-being. Again, at a toll to my own well-being. I forfeited my self-care routine to go and try and get these campaigns in order. Since, maybe this is like
my skincare
nostalgia.
regimen went right out the window.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is, I don't know, nostalgia on my part, but I seem to remember a time when the campaign managers for these campaigns were kind of expected to go the distance to like run the campaign through election day.
Finish, yeah.
And if they didn't make it, that was a failure. Donald Trump burned through 3 or 4 campaign managers, but, Barack Obama, he had the same campaign manager the whole time. Clinton kept the same campaign manager the whole time. Robbie Mook, I'm not saying that these are model campaigns, but, the norm is when you managed a campaign and you promise, as Daou wrote, our ironclad commitments is that we will be on the ballot through election day. You're basically saying you're going to stay the course because this is a huge opportunity. And now you're saying, hey, I did my job. I got their finances in order. I built the team, and then I left. That's what a campaign manager does. They stay around for 8 weeks. They strip the candidate of all ballot access and all supportive infrastructure, and then they leave to go do, self-care. Another fact, my personal beliefs are significantly to the left of both candidates I've worked for in this cycle. Who cares? That doesn't matter. Yeah. Finally, I remain deeply grateful to Jill Stein for bringing me to Dr. West's campaign and to him for giving me the opportunity to support his mission. I've spent this cycle doing everything politically possible to mount credible challenges to the ruthless ruling parties. I've communicated with every non-GOP challenger, encouraged RFK Jr. to run as an indie, and relentlessly called on genocide-enabling Joe Biden to step down. Okay, now... this is his last piece, and then
a hero.
Yeah, exactly. This is his last piece of the thread, and then there's somebody replied to him, and he replied back, which I thought was very telling. Yeah. And although I have thicker skin than most, well, no, you don't have thicker skin than most. You're quitting.
Clearly not.
I'm still sick and tired of Twitter naysayers who snipe at me and the candidates I work for from the sidelines. I guess that's us. While we're doing everything we can to take on the oppressive system. Now, there was someone...
Well, if this is everything you can, thanks but no thanks. Why don't we sit down and shut the fuck up and get out of the conversation? You're not helping.
Yeah, exactly, which I thought that's what he was going to do. I thought that's why he quit in the first place, because he needed some time off. But here, Stir Me Some Biscuits says, quitting after upending West's best shot at ballot access through the Green Party is hardly doing everything you can, Peter. It's quite the opposite. And Peter says, who upended it? He makes his own choices. What don't you understand about a black man of his achievement and brilliance making his own decisions? Now, if you remember, Peter Daou fell back on all of this identity politics bullshit during the Hillary Clinton campaign. He really pioneered the Bernie bro strategy of just accusing Bernie Sanders supporters and anyone who had a bad word to say about his candidate of being sexist and even racially insensitive, right? I mean, this was his go-to back in 2016. This has been his MO all along, just to make the cheapest retort possible to any substantive criticism. Once again, this guy came on board to a campaign with ballot access in 17 states. He leaves the campaign with ballot access in 0 states and 0 infrastructure and apparently 0 staff. He mentioned word about them enrolling volunteers. And not to mention, Cornell's polling has really collapsed. He was up around 7 to 9 points a few weeks ago. Since all this, he's back down at 2 or 3. Since RFK entered the race, now you see RFK in the high teens, low 20s even in some polls, and Cornell low single digits. I mean, whether you want to say Dow destroyed it, ultimately I think the buck stops at the candidate. But there's a reason why the hiring of Peter Daou was the last straw for so many who were inclined to support the Cornel West campaign, and this is it. This is it. I mean, the fucking guy tanks the campaign, quits because he says he needs a mental health break, and then fights with people on Twitter all day who criticize him for leaving after having done an objectively horrible job, as everybody predicted he would, because he has a track record of repeated and colossal failure.
Yeah, well, people don't really change, and it's kind of a truism that none are more blindly fanatical than the convert, right? So he was a scumbag as a Clinton operative. He's a scumbag on the other side, if he truly is on the other side, and he's not just an op. Who was the guy? He was a major Clinton operative who had been like a notorious dirty trickster for the Republicans, and he just became a dirty trickster for the Clintons. He was one of their main people. He was very prominent in their circle.
Well, there's David Brock, but then I think the guy you're talking about is Dick Morris, who's now a Republican, because he started with the Clintons and now he's a Republican.
I'm talking about Brock. I think I'm talking about Brock. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Like, Brock never changed. He just switched teams. Right. So, Dow switched teams, but he's still that guy who's going to throw out the ad hominem attacks and the very Blanche Dubois getting the vapors when he's criticized. Oh, I do declare I am to the left of all of you. Right. He's still that guy. He's just batting for another team now, if he truly is, because it is suspicious that this guy keeps getting these jobs. How does he keep getting these jobs? Like, I could understand how you're a crazy, incompetent asshole who thinks you're qualified for these jobs and keeps applying for them. That doesn't explain why he keeps getting them. It's if you were running a fucking third-party campaign, would you hire this loser? One look at his resume, you would say, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, there was a no-brainer from day one. And, look, everyone who doubted the Cornell campaign has been proven right, and everyone along the way who has apologized for the Cornell campaign at every turn has been proven wrong. I mean, that's ultimately what you have to look at, right? Who's been proven right here and who's been proven wrong? Anybody who still has any faith that this campaign is even going to last through the spring, I think, is really fooling themselves. I mean, he may do what Marianne's doing, which is run a sort of, PR campaign.
Yeah.
Basically, use the
talk
fact
to
that
podcasters.
Exactly, use the fact that he's running for president as ways to get on TV and talk to podcasters and things like that. But there is no campaign here. I mean, now there literally is no campaign here. Who's the campaign manager now? What campaign is there? What infrastructure is there? He's a guy who says he's running for president at this point. There's no machine behind him. There's no organization behind him at this point. We really thought that
he should
those hopes were gone when he left the Greens, but now I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah, you should get Howie Hawkins to take over the campaign.
Right, exactly.
There's a guy with a record of success.
We'll see if Howie Hawkins ends up on the green ticket again. Who the hell knows?
And I'm seeing some people, before we went on in the chat saying, well, now Cornel could get serious. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sorry, man. But we haven't dropped this in a while. It seems appropriate.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Cornel, this whole campaign was the worst thing he ever did for his image and reputation. Because I think a lot of us, myself included, who admired him, and very few people had a bad word to say about him. A few did. When he declared, there were a few people who did say this about him, that he was not what he appeared to be, that he was essentially a liberal Democrat, and that's really his guiding star. And, some people said it, but I think most of us, particularly because he was on board with both Sanders campaigns, people who came out of the Sanders campaigns, that's basically what we knew about Cornel West. Most of us hadn't really delved into his record. This destroyed his image. I mean, to me, like, in terms of torching his reputation, the Harlan Crow thing really did it. And then the self-justifying identity politics, trying to shield himself from responsibility for that and having to be pressured to give that money back. Framing his collection of Nazi memorabilia as a never forget themed collection. Like, dude, I'm sorry, man. When you're out there trying to justify the man's fondness for the products of the Reich, it's time to reevaluate the turns you've taken in life.
Yeah. So, that is one of the final chapters, I think, in the Cornel West campaign. I don't think there will be much to report on going forward, but that's certainly quite the send-off.
There are some people, and I almost feel sorry for them. There are some people who they're going to go down with that ship. There are some commentators who are still defending him. And I can tell you, as a former shitlib and a big Clintonista myself, when you put yourself in a position where you are basically an unpaid PR person for unscrupulous political leaders, they're always going to put you in positions where you're going to get more and more degraded and humiliated. It is a very thankless gig, I can tell you from doing it for many years, making excuses for the Clintons. There's never a bottom. No sooner have you talked your way out of, backing a serial molester of women at best, than they're selling arms to autocratic regimes with horrific human rights records that have given money to their institute, right? Like, there's never a bottom. It's increasingly the same way with Cornel. You think you've had to make excuses for him now? You're not done yet. As long as he's in this campaign, you're going to be making excuses for this guy because he's not what you thought he was. So, just get past the cognitive dissonance, accept he's not who you wanted him to be, move on, and let it teach you a lesson. Like, don't worship leaders. Don't follow leaders. Leaders are valuable insofar as you can use them to further your political objectives, and that's it. That alchemy that takes place where you become an admirer. Oh my God, that's amazing. As soon as you see yourself thinking like that, check yourself. You're out of touch with reality.
Yeah, and it's not that Cornel West is Bill Clinton, obviously.
I'm not saying
but
that.
It's the dynamic.
You got to go a
of
long way.
A fan, right? Exactly.
I'm making a commentary on
right.
why you should never develop that kind of relationship to political figures.
Right, because you never know where that can take you.
You never know. Well, and especially when they keep disappointing you. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. It's like that meme that goes around. believing in a politician is like thinking the stripper really likes you.
Right.
That's it. You know, never get invested in these people in that way, because you're gonna wind up having to betray your own principles in order to defend people who wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire for the most part.
Right. Yeah, indeed. Eric Rousseau, the genocide in Gaza is making me viscerally sick. Yes, I know this. You posted a couple things, but yeah, absolutely, obviously, no doubt about that. George Holstein, geez Louise, you guys are brutal. Well, I hope you all have a nice night's sleep. Good for you. Catching both shows today is a pain in the ass and better damn well be worth it. Well, I hope it is, yes. George Holstein is over in Haifa, which is northern Israel. Yeah, we were on, I guess, this is late at night for you over there, but we were on earlier this morning because the Patreon show was, 8 p.m. Eastern last night. Quick turnaround on these programs. But thank you for that generous donation, sir. Joe Cavara, thank you for the $2. Keep on rocking in the semi-free world, homies. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Super chats and Rumble rants really help for the morning show, so thank you guys very much for your contributions. And while we are paused here for a super chat break, why don't we plug and shout out our beautiful Patreon supporters and paid Substack subscribers. So, folks, you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and become a supporter of the show. You get call-in access to our weekly Sunday evening post-show question and answer portions. Those are Rumble exclusives, and those are a lot of fun. You also get your name up in lights here on the show credits, as well as access to 2 supporter-exclusive live streams per month. We just did our second one of October last night. We did our first one on October 10th. So we do those more or less bi-weekly, one towards the middle of the month and then one towards the end of the month. But those are a lot of fun. Those are uncensored live streams over on Rumble. So you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and support us there. You can also go to DoDissidents.substack.com and join our Substack membership. If you join as a paid member over there, that really helps us out. There's free memberships available, which puts you on the newsletter, so that is cool as well. That helps you stay in touch with us, but you also get access to those supporter exclusive live streams over there. So if you can go and help us, becoming a monthly supporter really is what keeps the show going. That is what keeps the show censor-proof and tech-proof. And another way that you can do that now, we actually have this hooked up now because it was a little easier than I thought it would be to look it up, is we have a locals. So if you are watching on Rumble right now, there should be a prompt right underneath the screen that allows you to join our locals. So locals works pretty much just like Substack. You can join for free or as a paid locals member. But if you join as a paid member on locals, you get access to the same perks and access to features that you would get joining through Patreon or Substack. So if you go to DoDissidents.locals.com, you could you could sign up for free, or you can become a paid member starting at $5 a month. You can donate whatever you want on locals as either a one-time or a recurring donation. So the cool thing about locals is it kind of does work as a sort of, open sort of contribution venue for people to support the show. And if you support us through there, like I said, you get the same perks that you get through Patreon or Substack. So if you're on Rumble right now, click that join button if you'd like and check it out and join our locals. If you're on Rumble right now, join the locals even for free. You don't have to join as a paid locals member. Join it for free. It works pretty much like the newsletter, like Substack does. We'll post when we're going live and all that stuff. And then there will be the paid subscriber exclusive post, which gets you call-in access to the weekly Q&A shows on Sunday, and also access to the supporter exclusive live streams. But we are excited to get that launched. I was a little intimidated by it because I know they have exclusive content features on locals. So I'm like, are we going to have to live stream to locals? Because that gets to be a technical, issue of linking that to our streaming software. But no, actually, locals works pretty much just like any other social media sites.
And it's completely unbanned. Links. So we're finally gonna be able to do our golden age of porn mystery science theater series. We're starting with Behind the Green Door. So sign up on Patreon and locals if you want access to that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Locals is a free speech forum as well.
Yeah.
It's linked
Devil and
through
Miss
Rumble.
Jones will be later in the month.
Yeah, right.
For,
exactly.
for Halloween next week.
That's right. Halloween's coming up. Lloyd Tackwell, thanks for the $5. The Colombian president's speech on Israel is red pill for understanding geopolitics and what is going on in the world around, and the real reason for these wars. I haven't seen that yet. There's been so much that we've been trying to catch up with.
It's
I have
just
not seen that
constant,
one yet.
man. I'm like sending Keaton articles at like 3 in the morning. I wake up, I look at the news feed.
Yeah, no, it's very, very difficult to keep up with all of it. But we certainly do our best. Richard Pemberton, thanks for the $20. Sabby showed a clip of 2 Harvard student activists for Palestine. They seem smart, grounded, and gutsy, not woke snowflakes unprepared for real-world consequences, as you suggested they might be. You should interview them. It'd be fun to interview, actually, a couple of the kids who are
That would be
protesting.
very, very interesting if we can run them down.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you for that donation. Appreciate that. And one of the things that we've said is that this has redeemed a lot of those social justice movements in ways that are surprising. Especially at these Ivy League institutions, because these are kids and maybe they don't understand this yet, or maybe they come from privileged enough backgrounds where they'll be insulated from the consequences of cancellation.
Well, they will. These kids ain't going hungry.
They're not going hungry, but when you come up in those circles, there's pressure to, succeed in ways that is not just the difference between like going hungry and not going hungry. Like every month, we get the rent paid as a success for us. Like we count that as a win. With these kids who go to Harvard, it's a whole different standard that they set for themselves. And in that sense, there is at least risk as they perceive it. Eric Rousseau says your chat is being censored by YouTube. Yeah, they censor all kinds of chat messages. We hear that all the time.
Yeah, we know.
Nothing new. Thank you. Tusker, thanks for the $5. I'm looking forward to West announcing Brother Shmuley as his new campaign manager. Yeah, good.
I mean, he's going to have to fight RFK for that.
He will have to fight because RFK is hiring now, apparently. Oh, no, he's not hiring. RFK has his CIA agent daughter-in-law running. Yeah, so RFK's
he's got the
position's
CIA. I mean, I appreciate that kind of openness. He has the CIA running his campaign openly.
Openly, yeah. Well, that's a good insurance policy if you got his last name, right?
Fair
Cool Blue 71.
Although it's like the mafia. They always send the ones who are closest to you to do the job.
Right, exactly. Peter Dow, next campaign manager for Cenk Uygur. Yeah, that would be funny. He should hire Cenk should hire Peter Dow. That would actually be great. That would be amazing. That would actually be really funny. I mean, what material that would provide.
The only thing that could make it better would be if Anna runs against him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, folks, let's move right along here. Segment number 3. Obviously, go ahead.
Can I answer a question here?
Sure.
It's not a super chat, but I'm confused, Russ. You say people don't change. Then how do you change from being a shitlib? I changed my opinion. I didn't change my nature. I was just as outspoken and passionate about being a shitlib as I am about not being a shitlib. Like, my personality didn't change. Very much like what I just said about Daou. My style is the same, but I have different views.
Right. All right, let's move on now to segment number 3. You might not know this, folks, but company earnings calls are public information. And so even private corporations are required to make public their earnings calls if they are publicly traded. And so More Perfect Union got hold of an earnings call from friends of the show over at Raytheon. And so let's take a listen to this earnings call where they are projecting new revenue streams and opportunities now that World War III is brewing on 2 burners, both the Middle Eastern front and the Eastern European front. Here is some audio. These are the people who really run the world right here, and we're not going to see them. We're going to hear them. But this is pretty fascinating stuff here.
Of Morgan Stanley.
Sorry.
Christine Liwag of Morgan Stanley.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Morning, Christine.
So maybe moving to a defense question. The White House is requesting $106 billion in supplemental spending for a number of national security priorities, which includes over $50 billion in investment for the U.S. defense industrial base. Looking at this request, you've got equipment for Ukraine, air and missile defense for Israel, and replenishment of stockpile for both. And this seems to fit quite nicely with the Raytheon defense portfolio.
Oh, good.
So how much of this opportunity is addressable to the company? And if the dollars are appropriated, when would be the earliest you could see this convert to revenue?
Ghouls.
Christine, let me start on that. So, as I think I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we've seen about $3 billion of orders so far related to Ukraine replenishment, and that's really replenishing U.S. war stocks. We expect another $4 billion of orders in the next 2 years. Again, most of that will play out over the next 24 to 36 months in terms of delivery. So you won't see a big revenue pop even next year from this. As we think about this next tranche, the president's $100+ billion request, which is more than $40 billion for Ukraine, what you're going to see is the same things that we have been seeing, but in much higher quantities. So obviously, NASAM systems, which is the short-range air defense system, and the AMRAAM munitions that we're using there, we're going to see those orders pick up, we would think, significantly. The same is true with the Patriot air defense system. Again, those are GEM-T missiles that we supply for that. Those are in short supply today. So again, a big ramp there. But
big ramp. See, a big ramp up in production and orders. Business is booming. You know, I couldn't do this for YouTube because we would not be allowed to show this footage here anyway. But for Twitter, I might use this call as the soundtrack for a video showing the consequences of what they're talking about, which is babies with their heads cracked open, right? You know, parents mourning the loss of loved ones, little kids mourning the loss of family members. That's just in Gaza. Well, let's not forget that the death toll in Bakhmut was 75,000 people. So let's not forget that either. The human toll of all this is just apocalyptic. And here these guys are just talking about all the orders that they expect to be coming in. When they expect this will hit the bank account. Well, you know, I mean, look, we're going to get a lot of orders over the next 24 to 36 months, but we shouldn't expect to see a major boost in revenue until after those orders are fulfilled, you know. I mean, just talking so clinically about such horrific apocalyptic tragedy and devastation. There is just no humanity to these people at all. No. And these are who run the country. This is who runs the country. All the politicians are just front people for these people. These people are who run things.
Well, and that's, as you know, our piss poor excuse for a financial analyst. You know, I take in a lot of the kind of news that covers these kinds of people. And yeah, man, I mean, Jim Cramer was on just the other night saying, put your money into defense stocks, right? I mean, there's no, the way that they talk about international events, it's all about, and domestic events, it's all about what you can make a buck off, right? It's all about where to put your money. It's all about where the profits are going to be. And there's absolutely, very few people feel no need to justify themselves morally. So, you know, in the end, they hide behind protecting America, right? They hide behind patriotism when it comes up. When the morality comes up, we're making the weapons that defend America. Hey, you don't have to look far to see that narrative. Watch the Sunday morning roundtables. They're full of ads from defense contractors that are warm and fuzzy, and Americans living on farms and wheat fields, right? We're protecting America so that you can live your American life, right? It's all shit like that. But yeah, this is what it is. They're like the Ferengi, you know. So it's all credits for them.
Exactly. This goes on.
We're also going to see other weapon systems come into play, specifically around, you know, countering the unmanned air vehicles. And, you know, we have systems today like the Coyote, which is very effective in terms of short range dealing with these unmanned air vehicles. So again, I think really across the entire Raytheon portfolio, you're going to see a benefit of this restocking on top of what we think is going to be an increase in the DoD top line. again, as we continue to replenish war stocks and also replenish some of the fleet in the Pacific. So that's SM2s, SM3s, and other munitions that are really a huge part of this backlog that we've got today.
Thanks, Greg. And how do we think about the margin profile of these incremental opportunities? Are these new contracts margin accretive?
I would no, actually, I wouldn't say they're margin accretive, nor would I say they're detrimental to margins. You know, these are going out at kind of normal cost type programs, right? So you're talking about margins, 10, 11, 12%. Again, these are well known in terms of the cost of these systems. We've been producing them for years, so we know what the costs are. And again, I think, again, it's helpful to overall margins, but it's not hugely accretive. Again, I think, Neil, 10 to 12 is kind of the sweet spot.
I think that's exactly right. These are mature, programs that we've got a lot of history on. It's all about getting the supply chain ramped up to deal with the increased production that we expect.
All right.
Great,
So as the piss poor financial analyst, so what he's saying there is we're not a new business. We already have a lot of these orders baked into the value of our company. So you're just talking about an increase on top. You're not talking about as if we're a new company that just got a contract where you're going to see 500% growth in the value of the company. That's what he meant by that.
Right, because there's a track record, they have a pattern, they can sort of project out, a certain amount of time in advance what they can expect. It's all about.
In other words, we're already
chain.
selling 1,000 missiles.
Right.
This just means we're selling 1,100 missiles.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, there's a quote there. It's all about getting the supply chain ramped up to deal with the increased production that we expect. So these are the conversations that these guys have. They don't have conversations about dead kids, about genocide, about displacement. These are the conversations that they have. And these are the people who have the government's ear, right? Along with the Israel lobby, which makes this exponentially more dangerous in this case. But yeah, this is the world that these people live in. They are just completely divorced from the consequences of what they do. They'll never see it. They'll never feel it. They'll never be made to answer for it. This is a relatively new thing where we're seeing these earnings calls posted online. We didn't used to see these things surface much anymore, but they are out there. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to go through them and see if there's anything of public interest, because look, most of these conversations are very boring, right? I mean, they're not easy things to sit through and see if there's stuff there that's in the public interest to know. A lot of it is just very sort of boring boilerplate shit that goes on internally at these companies.
Well,
but
in the third quarter, we saw some drop in China due to the COVID virus.
Right. Like most of it is not bombshell stuff. But the people who go through it and publish this stuff, it's long, thankless work, but it's good to do because you see clips drop like that, and it gives you a peek behind the curtain of just who these people really are, who they are, how uncaring they are, how inhuman they are. I mean, they really are.
Well, that's what really strikes you, because you listen to this. And they all live in a world where nobody's ever going to call them out for being monsters, right? Because, this will get picked up by the financial press, and then you get Jim Cramer. Yeah, so there was a really interesting call from Raytheon where they were talking about ramping up their margins, so you should buy today, right? There's no ethics, and you'd be called a fool if you raise those kinds of questions, right? You're not a serious person. You're not a trader. You're not an investor if you start asking questions like that.
Exactly. Yep. So that was something that we thought was worth playing. That's tweeted out by a More Perfect Union. So if you guys want to go and share that around, I think that's good for people to hear. And I probably will do that video and post that because I think that would make a certain points. Let's take a few super chats here before we go on further. We do take Rumble rants, by the way, folks. I am able to read them. I will try to post them if you have them. We are without Jake this morning, but I can still read them. I still have my screen open there. So if anybody wants to contribute and help support the show and get their thoughts or questions read, we can do that for you guys over on Rumble as well. And please hit that like button wherever you are, and please hit that subscribe button on YouTube, the follow button over on Rumble. Very important. Esoteric Teachings, West Uger 2024. Yeah, that could be a Unity ticket as well. Eric Torres, worst bebop ever. What was that in response to?
I think he's talking about the Cornel campaign.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But before we went online, Keaton said this is the stand-up bass portion of his campaign.
The upright bass solo portion of the Cornel West campaign. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
It's notorious for not going anywhere and having no resolution.
Exactly. Exactly. Vincent Shadetree, glad I found the channel at the beginning of the year. Well, so are we. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the contribution. Appreciate you. Big Cat's Corner, great supporter stream last night. JOO Dissidents, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. Glad you got to enjoy it. Yeah, we had a good time. We had a lot of callers call in. We did a lot of chatting with a lot of you guys. You guys, if you sign up at Patreon, Substack, or Locals, you get those supporter streams, and you guys can call into those. So those are pretty interactive shows. I think half the show last night was taking calls. We did about an hour and a half of content, and then another hour and 20 minutes or so of calls. Rough estimate there. But, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yep. Sign up. Sign up.
Weren't
we going to do the merch store?
Oh, yeah, we were going to do the merch store. We're going to do the merch store. All right, yeah, while we're paused here, let's do the merch store. So we do sell Do Dissidents merch right now. Our merch store is live and active. Russell, do you want to hit the background music? It's the last one down here. We've got some theme music for our merch store. This is Russell's grandfather, Menachem Dabular.
The true inventor of hip-hop.
Yeah, klezmer hip-hop pioneer.
He actually, the family sued. So far, we've been unsuccessful.
Well, this is not a schmata, actually. This is a mug. Here's a schmata. This is a good schmata right here. Look at that. Beautiful.
That was the line the Rolling Stones stole from my grandfather.
Yeah. Schmata, schmata, schmata.
No, we can't give it away on 7th Avenue.
Can't give it away on 7th Avenue.
Give
it away on 7th Avenue.
They said that it was impossible for this music to have been produced at the time. We said it was produced, but
exactly.
That's not true. It's not true. That's from 1917.
But if you go and you go to dodissidents.com/merch, we do have a variety of different apparel. We have pullover hoodies, zip-up hoodies, women's comfort tees, unisex comfort tees, tank tops, coffee mugs, and our cartoon logo tee designed by friend, fan, and supporter Eileen and Scott Johnson. So, yeah, you can go and place that order. They make great stocking stuffers. A Do Dissidents mug. Come on. A Do Dissidents mug is a great stocking item. So, as the holidays approach, make sure you go and get your swag. So that's dodissidents.com/merch.
It's like coming full circle back to my great-grandfather Menachem Dabular selling schmatas on the Lower East Side while inventing hip-hop with his Victrola repair business.
Yeah,
it's like I've come full circle. I'm selling schmatas again.
It's so easy to do. I mean, anybody now can sell T-shirts. Literally, you take a picture, you put it on the T-shirt, and then they handle all the distribution and stuff for you. It's pretty easy to do. T-Bone 316 over on Rumble. Thank you for the Rumble rant. I'm copying and pasting that right now. I got to do everything here today. Good morning, gents. How about Lula calling what Israel's doing a genocide takes balls? A great members-only stream last night. Thank you, T-Bone. Appreciate that. I didn't see Lula call that out either. That's another thing we missed. There's just so much here that we missed. Yeah.
It's just constant. Like, look, y'all know me. I keep wanting to do something about Disney. I keep wanting to do a story about the actor strike. I'm going to try to squeeze that in on Sunday, but it's so hard because how do you bump stories like that to cover Fran Drescher, right? Like how do you do,
like you can't. You can't. Exactly. And so there's just so much coming at us, but yeah, that is definitely something we will put on the list for Sunday. Certainly worthy. This is a story, this next piece, a little bit of an older one. By old, we mean, 4 or 5 days, right? 4 or 5 days seems like a year nowadays. But this was a dust-up between Ilhan Omar and Richie Torres. It has been quite a long time since we've seen any intra-Democrat feuding because the squad has so acquiesced to power that they hardly ever cause any kind of ruckus anymore. But here at a press conference, Ilhan Omar kind of loses it, and I mean loses it in a good way. You know, she speaks out of turn. Obviously, Ayanna Pressley was at the microphone, but Ilhan Omar was so offended, and rightfully so, at this question, that she just jumped in and called out Richie Torres, her Democratic colleague in the House. So let's take a look at this video first.
It is commonly believed by most doctors that a frontal lobotomy cannot heal itself, but maybe it can.
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe it can, because that's the first time I've seen life in her eyes in 2 years.
Yeah, this is not, we have not done a segment like this in a very long time for good reason. But here's the video first of Ilhan Omar calling out Richie Torres.
A question from anyone else?
Okay, so the question, the volume was a little bit low there, but this must have been, I don't know. I mean, this could have been any media outlet, but given just how direct that was,
Sadly,
this was probably like a One America News or a Newsmax or a Fox kind of thing. I mean, even the shitlib outlets phrase it a little more diplomatically than that nowadays because they have to. But the question was, why shouldn't Israel go after the terrorists? Why don't you want the Israelis to go after the terrorists that did that? That's the question.
Yeah.
So obviously Ayanna Pressley's at the mic, but Ilhan takes this one herself.
How many more killings is enough for you? Is it 1,000 more? 2,000 more? 3,000 more? How many more Palestinians would make you happy if they died? Will you be fine if all of the people of Gaza were gone? Would that make you happy? Would that be the thing that makes you proud? And maybe that's the question you should ask Richie. Is he okay? How many more Palestinian lives is he comfortable with? Because I'm not comfortable with any more.
Nope, and then she leaves. So
Presley's like, well, thank you for that shit sandwich, sister. See you around the cafeteria.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so I think this was a day later, or may have been later that day, but after that, obviously, Richie Torres appeared on CNN to talk Israel and Gaza, and this did come up about halfway through this clip we're about to see. This is about 3 minutes, and so we'll play this now. This includes his response.
York has remained one of Richie Torres of New York has remained one of Israel's most vocal defenders, and the congressman joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. You are a proud member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, but on the issue of Israel, your very vocal position is notably different from many others. For example, you wrote that the, quote, democratic socialist industrial complex indoctrinates young Americans with an anti-Israel hatred.
The democratic socialist
so
industrial complex.
Yeah,
that powerful
to the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Why do you think that is happening?
Look, there's been a concerted campaign to demonize Israel as if it is the root of all evil. And when you systematically...
That's America. That's America. Don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted. Nobody... Look, it is hard for me to do this segment on YouTube because for me to do this segment justice, I'd have to be on an uncensored platform. But right away, a straw man. There are people who say that Israel is the root of all evil. Whenever someone makes a hyperbolic claim like that, you know they're setting you up for a bullshit answer because they're starting out with a straw man. No one has said Israel is the root of all evil. But once you take that as the premise, now anything in Israel's defense seems reasonable by comparison because you've just straw-manned your opposition as having made an unreasonable claim, which nobody has made.
Demonize Israel, what inevitably follows is the dehumanization of Israeli victims. What inevitably follows is a democratic socialist
How about the Israeli defense minister who called the Palestinians animals?
Yeah.
Is he setting people up to justify any action against them?
Right.
glorifies the terrorism of Hamas. And so in my opinion, the hatred for Israel, the hatred has been taken too far. And, hatred is dangerous because it can easily harden into violence. And we've seen the demonization of Israel lead to a global outbreak of anti-Semitic violence, vandalism, and vitriol. Here in New York City, there was a
Haven't we
Jewish
seen the
woman.
dehumanization of Palestinians result in now the slaughter of 7,500 of them in Gaza over the past 3 weeks?
Well,
not even 3 weeks.
Well, and also I'll say, look, this is well known that they cast me out from the tribe when I was 9, when they kicked me out of Hebrew school, and I never went back. But I am even though I'm not practicing or very connected to the culture, I am of Jewish ancestry. And while I'm actually working on a shit post about what I think he's about to talk about, the Cooper Union incident where they were trying to break in to get to the Jewish students. I'm actually working on something about that. But I personally am deeply offended at the way that they have over decades made Judaism and Zionism synonymous. It's very unfair to all of the Jews that are not Zionists. And there are a lot of them. And a lot of them are actually in an organization that we have a lot of criticisms of, but they were on the right side of this, DSA. There are a lot of Jewish members in DSA. Are they anti-Semitic? What about the Jews walking around with signs, Jews for Palestine? Are they anti-Semitic? This is just a dodge to actually take on the issue. Just today, I still believe you can ally with people on what you agree with, and I've liked what the Free Press, Barry Weiss's outlet, has done on certain things. But predictably, it's become unreadable since this broke out. They literally put out an article just last night saying the soft part out loud. Well, now there can be no further doubt that to be anti-Israel is to be anti-Semitic. No. You're not hanging that on our fucking neck. You're not hanging that on our neck. You're not making us complicit in your crimes that way. You're not getting us on board with your criminal... I want to be careful what I say on this platform, but what you're doing in Gaza.
Yeah. No, of course. Absolutely. Let's just keep going.
Who was punched in the face abruptly, unprovoked, simply because she was Jewish. And so we are seeing anti-Semitic incidents take hold in an atmosphere of amplified anti-Semitism and heightened hatred against Israel as the Jewish state.
Okay, so the insinuation there is that pro-Palestine activists and pro-Palestine thinkers and writers are responsible for violence against Jews. No one supports violence against ordinary people. No one does. No one glorifies that. No one celebrates that. No one wants to see that. But this guy is just so unbelievably shameless and stupid that he is simply a mouthpiece for the Israel lobby. I want to take a little game break. There's more video to play because they're about to get into the Ilhan Omar comments. But I have to put this up on the screen because Richie Torres has blocked me on Twitter. He's blocked Sabby on Twitter. He's blocked Danny Haifong.
I've been because of that, just so we can keep an eye on him, I've been refraining from responding to what he's been.
Well, I have a personal account too that I could still see what he says if I switch handles. But yeah, he has blocked us, which is of questionable legality, thanks to Mr. Glenn Greenwald for retweeting our tweet there, where we cited the New York Civil Liberties Union, who said that, no, it's actually illegal for a politician to block citizens from an account that they use for political purposes, which he clearly uses this for political purposes. Yeah. This isn't his official Congress account, but he uses it for campaign purposes.
There's not pictures of his niece's quinceanera.
Exactly, right. And so it's probably illegal that he blocked us. And that's according to the New York Civil Liberties Union's own text, which if you Google... page 1, their text comes up on this. I tagged them in that tweet to see if they had anything to say about it. Glenn Greenwald retweeted that, so that tweet got about 150,000 views. It did pretty well. Nothing from them. No answer. I DM'd this. I said, hey, did you see this tweet? It's got 150,000 views. Do you have any opinion on this? I cited your writing in this. Nothing. Because they're a fucking Democrat group. They're just a partisan New York Civil Liberties Union. Who do you think donates to them. New York Democrats overwhelmingly pro-Israel. So they're a worthless organization.
We were only talking about Republicans, actually.
Yeah, we're actually only talking about Republicans. It's illegal for Republicans to block people on Twitter.
Democrats, that's not clear. That's
exactly.
not clear in the law.
There's no precedent for that, unfortunately. But while we're paused here, I do have to just make mention of the fact that this guy is just so clearly an empty-headed moron whose number one donor far and away happens to be the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. So here's Richie Torres' Open Secrets profile, top contributor from 2021 to 2022. So for the last midterm cycle, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. So look, I don't want to parse this, because if you're on the wrong side of this, it's just unforgivable. But a guy like RFK seems to be a true believer, a true sicko, like a true committed Zionist who somewhere in his sick mind feels like he is on the right side. All this fucking asshole knows is who pays him. He doesn't know anything about this issue. He knows that he's a moron. Jose did an intervention on him, which, to Torres' credit, he actually took questions. So Jose actually had a back and forth with him about the Nord Stream pipeline. It's very obvious the guy knew nothing about what Jose was talking about. He was just repeating vaguely from memory the talking points on that issue. So this is just an empty-headed bimbo who just defends genocide for money. And that's what I tweeted at him, and that's why he blocked me, right?
Yeah, you misgendered him. He's a himbo.
A himbo. That's right. I apologize. Maybe that's why they blocked me. Maybe that's why he's justifying it.
Probably.
No, I called him a low-life whore who gets paid to defend genocide. And that's what he is. I did not slur him. I did not harass him. I did not threaten him. I did not bully him. I expressed my opinion in a beautifully crafted and impeccably accurate statement. And for that, I was blocked. And I think that is against the law on his part. I don't expect him to face any consequences for it. We might file a lawsuit for $141,009, which is $1 more than he took from the Israel lobby last cycle. Because if he'll attack, if he will defend Israel for money, maybe he will denounce Israel for money. Maybe we'll say, hey, you know what? Denounce Netanyahu, and we'll call off the plan. All right? Maybe we can think of something like that.
Glenn, if you're watching and you're still licensed to practice in New York State, let's talk.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's see if we can get something going, because this is just really beneath contempt what this guy will do, for the simple fact that he is paid to do it. So it is just, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. All right, let's let this video play.
Congressman, your colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she is also, like you, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She called you out on Friday. Listen to what she said.
How many more killings is enough for you? Is it 1,000 more? 2,000 more? 3,000 more? How many more Palestinians would make you happy if they die? Will you be fine if all of the people of Gaza were gone? Would that make you happy? Would that be the thing that makes you proud? And maybe that's the question you should ask Richie. Is he okay? How many more Palestinian lives is he comfortable with?
What's your response?
I obviously resent those comments. Every casualty is a tragedy.
Is that
every
right?
war is a humanitarian crisis. But we have to keep in mind the causes of the war. Israel did not start the war. The war was imposed upon Israel
since
by the
1948.
barbaric
They've been in
terrorism.
violation of the UN resolution that these people have a right to return to their homes.
Exactly. They've been in violation of international law now for decades and decades. Well, this is the propaganda. This is the idea that this war began on October 7th, that the timeline, all the relevant knowledge of the situation begins on October 7th. Nothing before that matters. And once again, because we are here, we have to give our safe and effective disclaimer. We in no way intend to celebrate or glorify anyone's death or violence against anybody. That's not the point of this. The point is, when you start the timeline on October 7th, you get these simplistic narratives that say, well, what is Israel supposed to do?
Well,
what's happening now is an exaggerated version of what happened in Gaza before October 7th. This was already happening.
Right.
They were already being bombed from the sky. They were already being policed brutally. They were already being surveilled constantly. They were already having their imports controlled, their agriculture controlled. There was a video came out, what was it, a year ago, of the Israeli cement truck pouring cement down a water well in Gaza so that they couldn't access water. I mean, again, like, I don't know that this guy knows this because he's clearly so ignorant and stupid. But that makes it even worse in this case because he is literally willing to defend a genocide for money. That is all this is. That is all this is. One conversation with Ritchie Torres will show he knows nothing of what he speaks. All he knows is who pays him.
Well, and we didn't have time to get into this angle too deeply, but they're trying to build pressure to get rid of the United Nations General Secretary because he had the temerity, and Glenn did a piece on this, he had the temerity after condemning Hamas in no uncertain terms multiple times in his speech to suggest there was a context to what happened. So now they want to deny UN ambassadors access to Israel. And this whole song and dance, it's not helping. They're trying to pull the same tricks that used to work. They cannot concede in any way, even an inch, that the Palestinians have any legitimate grievances, because once you start to pull that thread, the whole fabric of their narrative unravels. That is why they are so absolutely insistent. You cannot try to have a nuanced discussion about this because it does not favor their argument once you start going down that road.
Exactly.
Of Hamas, which butchered 1,400 Israelis, including babies. You know, my colleague, Representative Omar, has voted against Iron Dome, which is a missile defense system that protects Israeli civilians from relentless rocket fire. Were it not for Iron Dome interceptions, there would be far more dead Israelis, far more by orders of magnitude. And so the policy positions that she has taken would have led to even more dead Israelis and more dead Palestinians.
So there's his response. Once again, I mean, these are just scripted talking points that this guy just says into the camera. He knows nothing. If he were paid, if Gaza had a lobby and they paid him, he'd say the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, if you have no ethics, being in Congress is a sweet gig, right? I mean, it pays pretty well. If you're there, I can't remember. You have to do at least three terms, and then you have a pension for life.
I think so. Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to get elected twice, so that would mean what? 3 terms, or gives you to get reelected twice. So I think it's 3 terms. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that
6 years.
That's a pretty sweet deal. And besides that, you get all that inside trading information, right? And that you can deny because I mean, if they come after you, they'd have to come after Pelosi and all the rest of them that make these crazy profits that are mathematically impossible to be random chance or insight or analysis. They regularly beat out the best investors in the world, Buffett, all of them, the Pelosi, all of these people in Congress. Pelosi's like the queen. So yeah, man, it's a sweet gig. If you have no morals, you just go in there, you say whatever they tell you to say, and you're sitting pretty for life. Even if you get voted out of office, you got that sweet pension,
Of course, and that's clearly, the way this guy sees himself. Yeah. It's just it's so
even
obvious.
If you get voted out, you'll get a board seat with a defense contractor, Amazon, all the people you helped out, they're going to give you a gig.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's horrible. But here we have Daily Beast reporting 10 House members vote against resolution supporting Israel. Thomas Massie, the Republican, voted with 9 Democrats. So 10 House members, including 1 Republican, opposed a resolution on Wednesday that declared support for Israel, the first measure to pass under the new leadership of Speaker Mike Johnson from Louisiana. The bill asserts that House stands with Israel as it defends itself against the barbaric war launched by Hamas and other terrorists and reaffirms Israel's right to self-defense. The four-page resolution also condemned Hamas's brutal war and urged Hamas to immediately cease these violent attacks and safely release all living hostages. 9 Democrats voted no: Jamal Bowman, Andre Carson, Cori Bush, Al Green, Summer Lee, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Delia Ramirez, and Rashida Tlaib. Thomas Massey also joined, writing on social media that the measure would call for sanctions on a foreign country and force an open-ended promise of military support that is so broad. 6 other Democrats opted to vote present: Greg Casar, Joaquin Castro, Jesus Garcia, Pramila Jayapal, Ayanna Pressley, and Nydia Velasquez.
Profiles encourage.
Yeah, indeed. So that's a sort of follow-up piece to that. Russell, you wanted to speak to that for a moment, I understand?
Yeah, so a lot of us coming out of the Bernie Sanders movement have really, we've discussed this a little bit, where perhaps as these events reveal, overly focused on domestic policy. And I think it's on all of us who have this deficit to educate ourselves, which I'm working to do right now. And I hope people who do have that blind spot also take time to try to look into credible information about the history of not just this, but China. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world that, goes beyond our fight for Medicare for all. But we have really turned on the squad because they have not held the line on those issues. And remember, most of the squad members are young, and they are products of a university system that focused on post-colonialism and identity politics. And while I'm glad they're taking the stand that they're taking, it's consistent with what we're talking about with the Harvard students, where they've never gone against the establishment on Medicare for all or raising the wage, right, or free college. They've never taken a stand on that. This is a bridge too far because this is the way they've been educated. This is in the way that they have had ethics and activism and social justice presented to them. It is all about race and colonialism and the evils of Western imperialism. And we agree with those things, but it's an incomplete picture. But it does say a lot that this is where they decided they're willing to piss off Mama Bear. This is where they're willing to piss off the establishment. Going along with this was a bridge too far. Throwing all the working class people who supported them under the bus on every policy priority they had, forcing a vote on Medicare for all, that was not a priority. That they were willing to bend on. This is the priority because that is the way they were educated.
Yeah, but there were enough numbers. I mean, the other part of this, too, is that in this case, they cannot really upend the system because there's overwhelming bipartisan support for
argument,
Israel.
yeah.
And so, only 10 members of the House voted against this resolution. And so they could afford to take a stand. Whereas on the more party line votes like the Build Back Better, them holding the line was the difference between Biden getting his way and the system being thrown into chaos. And in that situation where they actually had leverage and power, they caved immediately. I think that's a big part of it, too. You're this
right.
is more a symbolic stance. Now, look, what I will say is for Tlaib and Omar, this is clearly a personal thing. Like, when you see Rashida Tlaib talk about this, it's clearly not just doing a political speech. She could barely get through it without breaking down. And Omar, too. Yeah. So that's why I think she snapped at that conference when she got that question. But I do think in terms of the mechanics of this, in terms of the politics of this, I think a lot of this is the fact that, they can afford to piss off leadership without actually upending the system here because there's such overwhelming bipartisan support for this. Now, that being said, in a game of narrative control, every little bit counts, right? And so if they're out there, saying, hey, how many dead Palestinians would make Richie Torres happy? Yeah, that creates a headache for him because it creates a headache for the media. It creates a headache for the narrative managers, right? Because that's the other front on which this is being being fought here. So I'll give them credit for that. But in terms of actually, like, is this an indication that they can actually be trusted to, hold the line when it counts? Absolutely, 100% no.
No, and I agree with you. But as AOC calls it, relational harm. They're willing to cause relational harm to take a stand on this in a way that they are not willing to on domestic policies that affect the working class voters that really put them in power now that their power is pretty secure because they all represent deep blue districts. You're right that the rubber meets the road when the funding bill comes up. And do I think they're going to hold up to that? They'll do the Democrat shell game. Just enough of them will vote against it for it to pass while they can say that they voted against it. I would agree with that. But at the same time, look, those people, Mama Bear, they don't like you fucking with the narrative this way. And it undermines their whole premise to legitimacy that they are the defenders and upholders of the rights of the displaced and of people of color and marginalized groups, right? To have these brown women going out there saying how many dead will be enough for Richie, that's a big PR problem for them.
Yes, indeed. There is no question about that. But another real test will come when election season rolls around, because obviously Rashida Tlaib represents a district in Michigan with several Muslim communities inside it, many of which have already pledged they will not vote for Joe Biden.
Right.
At this point,
do they campaign for him? Like, what do they
do? What do they
Yeah.
do? I mean, that's going to be a major test, because as we're going to demonstrate in the next segment, the Biden's response to this has just been absolutely horrible. But before we get to that, let's take a few more super chats here. Billy D, thanks for the $10. Cornel was doomed as a novelty candidate from the start. The combo of brother-sister charm and the dreadful funeral parlor wardrobe was the hypnotic draw that gets old really quickly. I gotta say, I don't know how he wears that shit in the middle of the summer. Like, he'll walk around in 90-degree heat with that.
I know.
Yeah.
Cornel West was the brand new key of presidential candidates.
Yeah. Kuznetsky Bassane, thank you for the $4.99. Appreciate that donation. McDougal, thank you, McDougal. Morning, fellas. Love the show. Just my weekly donation on behalf of the MAGA delegation. Yes, I remember you, McDougal. I still welcome you both whenever you are ready. All right, well, thank you for the invitation, my friend. Pete Sweet.
You've got the red hat in the closet. Ready to
Exactly. Right on, Keaton. Torres response written by AIPAC. This is the tale. Yeah, Israel lobby wagging the dog. U.S. Foreign Policy enlightening book, The Israel Lobby, U.S. Foreign Policy by John Mearsheimer. Yeah, I've heard of that one. In S. Walt. Thank you for that recommendation, Pete. Appreciate that. Christian Fortin, thanks for the $5. Still in Senegal. Was hoping that the jazz reference would trigger Russell. That was so funny last time. Misfire. Oh, because no, he's talking about the segment that you did. We did on Harlan Crow, where I read that Cornel was talking about him being a jazz man, and you're like, oh god damn it, he went to that again. Well, it's hard to trigger the same guy twice for the same reason. Once you see it coming, it's less potent the second time around, I guess.
I mean, it's just, Tylaxlu Gola has it here. John Coltrane and Fannie Lou Hamer, W.E.B. Du Bois, jazz man with Brother Peter jazzing off the board. Like, yeah, man, it's shtick. And, man, I'll take a victory lap. I said that when it was unpopular to say that it struck me as shtick.
Yeah, indeed. Jazz is about creative improvisation, says Richard Penderson for $5. Thank you. Within the structure of the composition, not playing random out of tune riffs. Yeah, you got to play in the key of the song. I used to make that mistake.
I'm not sure if he understands what jazz is, frankly.
Well, it's funny, when I played the trumpet in high school, and I was in all county jazz band, and we had to play, and the guy told me the key. He wanted everybody to take a solo, and he told us the key. And so I played in the wrong key, because for those of you who don't know, the woodwind instruments are tuned to different notes. So, like, the standard tuning is based on the piano tuning. So if we're going to play, this song is in the key of G, that's based on the piano key of G. But the trumpet is tuned to B flat. So we're one step lower.
So that means it'll all be in the G scale? Like, all the notes will be in the G scale?
Right, all the notes will be in the G scale. But the trumpet is built and tuned to a B flat, which means that if the key is in if the song is in the key of G, you have to play, I believe, in the key of A to be in tune with it, because your instrument is tuned one note lower than the song.
Right.
But I didn't get that at the time, so I would just play in the wrong key, and solo would sound horrible, and I didn't understand why, because I'm like, why does this sound so shitty? I didn't understand the theory well enough, which was on my teacher. I mean, he should have told me. He's a fucking teacher. What's he doing?
Exactly. That's not on you.
It's not on me. Exactly.
You can finally let that go, Keith. I'm absolving you.
Yeah,
that wasn't your fault. There's like the penultimate scene of Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting. Right?
It wasn't your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault, Keith. It's not your fault that you destroyed the recital in 5th grade.
No, that was in the rehearsal. They didn't call on me for the recital, I think for that reason, because I played in the wrong key. In the rehearsal, they let everybody solo, and then they figured they'd like pick the 4 or 5 best soloists for the performance, which I was not called upon in the performance. That's probably why. Rod Ngu, thank you for the €2. Appreciate that very much. All right, we got a couple more super chats, which we'll get to after this final segment of the day. This is kind of a big one here. But obviously, the death toll now in Gaza is around 7,500. That's what's being reported by most people who I tend to trust for this stuff. But Joe Biden was asked about the death toll in Gaza, and here is what he had to say.
Hamas killed 14 days since Hamas killed 1,400 Israelis. The Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry says Israeli forces have killed over 6,000 Palestinians, including 2,700 children. You've previously asked Netanyahu to minimize civilian casualties. Do these numbers say to you that he is ignoring that message?
What they say to me is I have no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think not we, the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't happen. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
Okay.
That was a complete sentence. It just shows you that whatever suppository they have stuck up his ass to keep him coherent in these press conferences, they were pressing the button to release that stuff into his bloodstream hard when it came to Israel.
Yeah, apparently. But he has no confidence in the numbers that the Palestinians are using. Well, who does have confidence in the numbers that the Palestinians are using? The radical far-left outlet, The Washington Post, which posted this on October 24th. Why news outlets and the UN rely on Gaza's health ministry for death tolls. Hamas appointed its own health minister after it took control of Gaza in 2007, separating the ministry from the Palestinian Health Ministry in the West Bank, which is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. After the takeover, some officials accused Hamas of ousting doctors linked to Fatah. Many experts considered figures provided by the ministry reliable, given its access, sources, and accuracy in past statements. Everyone uses the figures from the Gaza Health Ministry because those are generally proven to be reliable, said Omar Shakir, Israel and Palestine director at Human Rights Watch. In the times in which we have done our own verification of numbers for particular strikes, I'm not aware of any time in which there's been some major discrepancy. Shakir said Human Rights Watch would not use figures provided by parties with a propensity to misrepresent information. We know that a health ministry is going to base death tolls on assessments coming from hospitals, morgues, etc. They have an ability to collect that in a way that other sources not there can't do. And given the blockade, you make it impossible for most sources to get there. And so there's the Washington Post saying, hey, here we have this guy who takes these numbers seriously, and they print that in their paper. And so they are not the only one. A lot of human rights organizations have come out and said, no, these numbers are accurate. CARE put out a statement saying that this is unbelievable, this is dehumanizing, what Biden just said,
They're
denying,
animals.
like what?
They
You
can't be
don't, so what, I
trusted.
mean, what the fuck? I mean, it's
They're
just,
Arabs.
it's absurd.
You can't trust Arabs. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much racist subtext in a lot of this framing that we don't even think about, right? I mean, that's always been the thing. We covered that on the Patreon stream last night, the Egyptian woman yelling at CNN. What about our side, right? Because there's been this baseline assumption for not decades, centuries, that, if it's coming from the West, it has the seal of approval. And if it's coming from any place else, it's suspect. And that is, we're not doing a segment on this, but just to mention it, the New York Times actually did a study of the claims of American intelligence and Israeli intelligence that they had tracked the missile that had likely blown up the hospital, and it came from inside Gaza. And they used multiple cameras around Gaza to prove that actually, no, that missile came from inside Israel. And it didn't even impact the hospital. They didn't make that claim. They said it blew up about 2 miles away from the hospital after that explosion had already happened. But it just proves they sit down and they try to present the idea that they are credible and professional. And again and again and again and again, it is proven that they are not. So what position are you in to start questioning their numbers? You're providing reliable information? You're a reliable source of information? You just proved that you're not, literally, just now.
Well, the big tell here was at the very beginning. The segment that we did when Max Blumenthal confronted Matthew Miller, the State Department talking head, when, Matthew Miller said, we will have discussions about Israel's plans or statements that may, foreshadow or indicate a violation of international law. We will address those with them in private, behind closed doors. That tells you everything you need to know. And that's why we did that segment. That's why we hammered on that point. Because once they say, well, we are going to settle matters of dispute with Israel behind closed doors, that just tells you they are going to call a huddle whenever they have to get their bullshit straight. And that's the line of bullshit that they're going to throw out. When it was the hospital strike, we knew their line at that point. Now, when he gets confronted, well, we can't trust these death tolls. What are you talking about? You said, the images and videos are out there. Entire neighborhoods destroyed. What's happening is very obviously a carpet bombing of Gaza. This is a carpet bombing.
Right.
And so what do you mean you're doubting the civilian casualties? You're doubting the numbers. I mean, it's just so obscene, but it is the kind of thing that you could see coming from, 1,000 miles away. As soon as Matthew Miller says, well, we're going to keep matters of disagreement private, what that means is that they are going to meet behind closed doors and figure out how to handle issues that become PR problems for the state of Israel, even as Benjamin Netanyahu goes out and publicly says a thing like this. Let's go to this video.
Against Hamas is a test for all of humanity. It is a struggle between the axis of evil of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and the axis of freedom and progress. We are the people of the light. They are the people of darkness, and light shall triumph over darkness.
We are the people of light. They are the people of darkness. Light
it's the Crusades.
shall triumph over darkness. You're going to doubt that the civilian casualties? This guy is outwardly framing this as a clash of civilizations.
Right.
He said the morning of the attack on October 7th, we are at war and the enemy is going to face an unprecedented response. Again, you could see all this from the very beginning. None of this was difficult to see coming. We said all this in our first broadcast since this happened. When he says you can expect an unprecedented response, that meant genocide. There's no other way to interpret that because there is precedent for savage, large-scale violence on the part of the Israeli state against the people of Gaza, right? So if this is so if we're about to see something unprecedented, it means we're going to see something worse than that, which could only mean the eradication of Gaza as a place with a people in it. That's the only interpretation of that. And you could have seen that coming a mile away, and here we are. And how are they going to handle it? Well, turns out our government's going to do what they always do. Lie about it. That's it. That's all. Easy. Simple. Simple on their part. And it falls to us to get the word out. And luckily, not just we, Russell and I, but we broadly as a community, as a space here, have done a fairly good job, I think, getting the word out. That's why public opinion has turned as much as it has.
Well, we covered this on the Patreon show. I can't find it now. I think The Intercept dropped this. An Israeli think tank run by a former head of the Israeli version of the FBI under Netanyahu just dropped a paper saying that October 7th was a tremendous opportunity to clear Gaza of Palestinians. And that is clearly what they're trying to do. There's actually a
No
Hebrew
question about it.
There's a Hebrew phrase that translates as establishing facts in the field. It's basically the same as the English phrase, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do, in my opinion. They want to drive all the Palestinians out of Gaza, absorb it as part of Israel, and then people can complain about it later. But at that point, it's a fait accompli.
Exactly. We have one more segment here. It's kind of a subsection of this one that we're going to do in just a moment. But I do want to take a brief game break for a couple of super chats. And please, folks, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button over on Rumble. We just crossed 400 viewers over on Rumble. That's amazing. Hit that follow button over there. Very important. Pete Sweet. MSM reports U.S. carried out airstrikes today against 2 weapons facilities in Syria used by Iran. That's right. Never did the reporters ask, why are U.S. troops in Syria? Yeah, they're getting ready for a wider war, of course.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. We said we were going to mention that, and I think it slipped our mind for some weird reason.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of markets, the markets are totally melting down. They know World War III is coming.
Yep. Yassine Miller, thanks for the $20. That's very kind of you. My father's worry about my future husband was the education level. Nowadays, my worry about my daughter's future husband is his political view. Yeah, and whether he would be a politician or not. They are all despicable. Yeah, it's a good point. Good points. Thank you for that. Black Freud, love you guys. Love you too, Black Freud. Thank you. Went to college with Cornel. Sniffed him out at Hello John Coltrane. Glad you weren't fooled either. Oy vey. Yeah. Hey, maybe you know, Black Freud, maybe you want to come on the show sometime, talk about that a little bit. That might be fun.
That would be interesting.
We'll reach out if you're up for it. Laugh, thanks for the 10 pounds. This is a two-parter. Censorship has huge consequences. Look at pre-code Hollywood. The cultural control caused by Hayes was not just people think miniskirts were unknown before the 1960s. And then second, Mad Dog of Europe, An Attack on Hitler, 1933, was never made as a result of censorship. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an element of this that we have tried to sound the alarms on as best we can. Derek P. West.
There was a lot of, if we don't speak the vocabulary anymore. The way they got around censorship was they used a lot of code that audiences would have picked up to imply, yeah, in this scene they're fucking.
Right.
People would have understood it then. Now we're just like, what happened there? Why did they cut away? If you go back and you watch Marx Brothers stuff, Groucho Marx is making these really dirty jokes. And his technique was to say them so fast the censors wouldn't catch it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was one way to dodge that. All right, I got some Rumble rants, couple that we'll read in a few moments. Excuse me. Derek P., thanks for the $5. Wes used to remind me of Coltrane, sounding more like Kenny G these days. Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. Good one. All righty, folks. So this is our final segment of the day. This is related to Biden's remarks denying the Palestinian death toll. Well, here's some undeniable trauma, just a horrific story here from the New York Times. Several family members of Al Jazeera's Gaza bureau chief are killed. Wahel al-Daou, described by his colleagues as the voice of Palestinians in Gaza, lost his wife, son, daughter, and infant grandson, Al Jazeera said. At least 4 family members of a prominent Al Jazeera journalist in Gaza were killed, the news organization said on Wednesday. The network said the wife, son, daughter, and infant grandson of Wahel al-Daou, the Gaza bureau chief of Al Jazeera's Arabic language service, were killed at the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza, where they had been sheltering. Okay, so if this is a refugee camp, why were they hit? Like, if there's any... Like, we are supposed to believe that they're taking care to not harm civilians, and then what are you bombing a refugee camp for? Why were they hit at a refugee camp? Why is that not a safe shelter? It's just so absurd.
And the question is also, was his family being specifically targeted in retaliation for his reporting?
Well, that's a question too, but I have a feeling. I mean, this is hunch. This is not based on anything. What we're seeing is a carpet bombing. That's what we're seeing. And
Al Jazeera did an investigation about this, and while they didn't make the claim, one of the Israelis actually said it, that they had retaliated against his family. Like, they had that in their news report about it. They said we can't prove that that's the case, but this is deep within a zone that they claimed was a safe zone, and this is the one spot that they hit within that zone. So you can't know for sure that's the motive, but it doesn't look great.
No, it doesn't look great.
22 journalists have already died in the course of this.
Yes.
Israel has a long history of targeting journalists.
They killed a Palestinian American journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh, and our government didn't do shit about it. Nothing. Not a fucking thing. Not a fucking thing. And if they were able to target this guy's family, that would speak very well of their intelligence capabilities, which apparently failed on October 7th and has been pretty reliable since then. Yeah, exactly. Since then. In a statement, Al Jazeera's parent company, the Al Jazeera Media Network, blamed an Israeli airstrike and condemned the killings as an indiscriminate assault. See, it blamed Mr. al-Dadou's family had taken refuge at the camp after Israel called for civilians to move south. Al Jazeera is deeply concerned about the safety and well-being of our colleagues in Gaza and hold the Israeli authorities responsible for their security, the network said. A spokesperson for the Israeli military said in an email that it had targeted Hamas terrorist infrastructure in the area, adding that its forces take feasible precautions to mitigate civilian casualties. And again, with guys like Biden coming up and saying, well, we don't even believe these death counts are accurate, who is there to hold them accountable for making statements like that? Statements that they obviously don't mean, they have obviously no intention of living up to. Who is going to blow the whistle on them? Nobody.
Right.
Nobody. Right? It's just a blank check. Mr. al-Dadou had spent Wednesday reporting from Gaza City and learned of his family's deaths live on air, and Al Jazeera editor Mohammed Mowad said in posts on social media. Al Jazeera identified two of the deceased as Mr. al-Dadou's teenage son, Mahmoud, and his young daughter, Sham. So we're going to go to a couple videos here. We are not going to show videos of him with any dead children or bodies that we think. First of all, we would get the video age blocked, which we don't want because we want as many people to see these as possible. Second, I just think it's in poor taste to do that. But here he is walking through the hospital after getting the news.
جوالك يا حسن بينفعش نفتحها الله ونعم الوكيل.
Now, told you it's not easy to do this. Here's a statement he put out on video because he's back at work. He's back at work.
Right back.
He went right back. And here he is.
How do you do that?
Here he is, talking about why.
السلام عليكم. أولا شكرا على كل رسائل التضامن والاتصالات والسؤال عنا والتضامن معنا والدعوات لنا. بالتأكيد هذا شيء كان مهما بالنسبة لنا، لكن رأينا أنه من الواجب أن نعود سريعا رغم كل شيء. فالساحة والمحاور ما زالت تشتعل كما ترون بالغارات وبالقصف المدفعي والتطورات متلاحقة. فرأيت أن من واجبي رغم الوجع ورغم الجرح النازف أن أعود سريعا وألتقيكم من خلال عدسة الكاميرا عبر مواقع التواصل. يعطيكم العافية وأسألكم الدعاء دائما وأبدا. السلام عليكم.
I can only think that, and this is only speculation, obviously, I could never know what it's like to be in that position. But I can only think that part of the reason why, he handles that with such poise, and why so many of these people handle it with such poise, we saw the interview with Bassem Youssef, talking about, his family's, the house being bombed out and not knowing whether they're okay. This is just, and this speaks to this problem of, this is just reality for these people.
Yes.
It's reality. Like, the risk of being blown up in an airstrike is something they're used to.
Right.
And so when it happens, obviously it's tragic. Obviously it's, I could never claim to know what that feeling is like. But it's not a surprise. Like, it's not necessarily a shock. They know this is a risk they take every single day just by being alive, just for the fault of having been born into a concentration camp. And this is what low-life whores, yes, like Richie Torres, will never tell you. That no, the conflict did not start on October 7th. This has been a fact of life for people in Gaza going back decades. And so maybe that has something to do with why he was able to get back to work so quickly. Because at a certain level, and again, I'm only speculating, I want to qualify this, I do not claim to speak for any of these people. But if I'm speculating, the only explanation I can come up with that makes sense for me, and again, this is biased because this is a subjective thing on my part, but it can only be because they know that this is a risk they take every day. And so it's not out of nowhere when it happens.
I think it's also their religious faith. I think that's probably part of what keeps them going and supports them. If you look at the language he used, it was very rooted in Islamic philosophy and thought. But yeah, you're right. I mean, look at us, and of course there's no comparison here, but it just shows you how quickly people can become acclimated to horrors. It's our nature as a species. We're adaptable. Look at this shooting. That happened in May. Like, that one's bad enough that it pricked people's ears up a little bit, but it's not a huge story. It's not.
No.
Not the way it would have been 20 years ago. That would have been the only story.
Of course.
In news. That would have been round-the-clock coverage about that.
Even 10 years ago, that would have been the only story.
Sure. We've become desensitized to these shootings. Obviously, on a much larger scale, that's what's happened to people in this region. I mean, you go back, this is part of our reaction to COVID and the culture of safetyism. In the West, we've become so safe that to even contemplate death and mortality is like a faux pas, right? Like, we don't even want to contemplate.
Right.
Yeah, nobody can die. Nobody can die. So much so we're gonna lock down a generation of children to their everlasting detriment on no evidence that they're under any particular threat, because we just absolutely cannot have anybody die. And you look at the world that people lived in really until about 100 years ago, and death was a constant companion, right? People didn't live very long. You go through an old cemetery, everybody's dead by their 40s, right? I mean, 40s is already a ripe old age. And we in the West are so removed and insulated from that. And I think part of what this is bringing home to people who do live in this relatively safe society is how horrific the conditions are in the rest of the world. And that's why this is such a PR disaster for Israel. Nobody was really looking into this, right? Not even us, to our shame, right? Not even people within our movement, to our shame. We weren't talking about this. We weren't covering this. And now we're aware. I know things about this I did not know a week ago.
Right, of course.
And that's true of tens of millions of people. And you just cannot look at something like this and say, I stand with Israel. How can you? How can you? I mean, at best, you're calling for a ceasefire.
Right. Of course. But if you're Richie Torres and they gave you $141,000, then I guess you can look the other way.
Then I guess you can.
Right?
I guess you can.
If you're on the board at Raytheon and you see this as a revenue potential, I guess you can look the other way or just force it out of your mind. 100 senators just voted unanimously to condemn anti-Semitism on college campuses, equating anti-Israel protests with anti-Semitism, which we talked about earlier in the show, obviously.
Right.
We have to say it again because we're going to clip this separately. But, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same thing. It is a very offensive comparison to say they are. And everybody voted for it, including Bernie Sanders voted for that. And so you look at a situation like this and you just look at how no one in power is willing to say what is just so obviously the basic moral truth. I mean, it's not difficult. It's not hard. Nobody will say it. Nobody will say it.
Well, the people are saying it, and that's what's fascinating. And as we talked about on the Patreon stream last night, I think the reason you're getting more fair press coverage, like that Washington Post article, for example, hitting back at Biden's claim that the numbers are unreliable. Who's in these newsrooms now? We decry it when it's a Taylor Lorenz trying to cancel people for bullshit, but at the same time, these people are going to be much more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. These are the reporters now. The reporters are that generation, the old guard, the RFK kind of people who came up with Israel is always right. That's not the bulk of the newsroom anymore. And I think that's why you're getting fairer press coverage than I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. All right, we'll take some super chats, and then we do have to wrap on the morning. But thank you guys very much for being here. 409 in the Rumble chat, 853 in the YouTube chat. Thanks for being here. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you are. Very important. George Holstein, thank you for the donation. Great video with members of Standing Together about the war. Arabs and Jews in Israel fighting for peace, reform. Facebook, Instagram, and... Facebook, I like that. Instagram and IngWA. What is that? I don't know what that one is. They just connected some people in New York. Let me know. All right. I'd be lying if I said I totally understand what you're saying, but you're a patron, so send us a message through Patreon or send us an email. DoThisInto@gmail.com and maybe flesh that out a bit more. But thank you. And thank you for the donation. McDougal, thanks for the $4.99. 2-for-1 special. Curious y'all's thoughts on the MAGA hostile takeover of the House and GOP. Can you imagine the squad ever fighting their masters? No, look, they seem to have gotten what they wanted. We will see whether that pays any dividends for them. I'd be curious, though, McDougal, for your thoughts about this, about the Israel-Palestine issue, about a question of whether or not you think that Trump will be less hawkish on this. Because what I see is...
There's no indication of that.
There's no indication of that. Right, exactly. I mean, what I see is, Trump would just take the rhetoric even further. Like, Trump wouldn't even bother saying they should watch out for Palestinian lives. Now, on the other hand... I think Trump views war a bit differently from the way these people view war who are in charge now. So just because his rhetoric might be more hawkish, that doesn't necessarily mean his policy would be more hawkish if there is risk of a broader military conflict. So I would be curious to hear what he has to say, genuinely. I don't have any hope that he is in any way an answer to this. In fact, I think quite the opposite. But I'd be open to hearing something because he's the only person in this race right now who's not part of this plan to just march us into World War III.
Honestly, from watching Trump for years, I think the idea that was put out by that Israeli think tank, let's just get it over with, let's just get these people out of here, I think that would make sense to Trump.
Yeah, I mean,
let's just get the thorn out of Israel's side and done. Otherwise, this is just going to keep dragging on.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the way he views it. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Okay, we have $1 from Ellen. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
We got some Rumble rants over here. Let's see. Speaking of book references, read Architects of Repression, How Israel and Its Lobby Put Racism, Violence, and Injustice at the Center of U.S. Middle East Policy by Walter Hickson. Must read. Trust me.
Hang on. Keep that up so I can take a picture.
All right. Russell's going to snap a picture of that. So thank you for that recommendation. And I apologize if you don't get the full shout out on Rumble because we are without Jake today. So I can't really post everything on here. I'm doing my best to catch all these Rumble rants. But that one was from T-Bone 316. So thank you, T-Bone. All politicians are actors and also bastard. That's from blank state. So thank you for the $2 there, my friend. And then we have another one here. Looks like scrolling down. Just want to make sure I cite these properly. This is from T-Bone again. Thanks for the $5. Question, if you had to guess, do you think they have something on Bernie, a.k.a. another P-tape? Or he voted yes voluntarily? No, I think he voted yes voluntarily. He's always been weak on foreign policy.
Yep.
He has never wanted to get on the wrong side of the foreign policy establishment. He'll do like what Barbara Lee did. She voted against Afghanistan, right? She voted against Iraq. He'll make some noise in that direction. But on this particular issue, he's always been lousy, And so, yeah, he called for a temporary humanitarian pause or something like that. What did he call it? A humanitarian pause.
Yeah, he put out a little statement.
Yeah, a little fucking bullshit statement. Even, Jeremy Corbyn, who is seen as the sort of UK version of Bernie, said that, that's weak. You have to call for a broad-based ceasefire, no pause, right? You just have to call for a ceasefire. And really, a ceasefire is the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum of what you should be calling for, as Russell said. But it's truly disgusting how few people are willing to say what is just such an obvious truth. It's really horrible. Wat Soup, W-O-T, Soup, over on Rumble. Thank you for the donation. Bisan Oda, I hope I said that name right, is a 25-year-old woman reporting on what's happening. Her Instagram is Wizard Bisan. Most of her reports could be shown here. Please show some on your channel. Okay, great. Let me take a picture of that. I can't. My phone died. All right. Well, I'll catch it on the replay, or Russell will do it. These are thankfully stored on the replay, so we'll be able to do that. But thank you. That's an interesting point, though, and thank you for that message because the aspect of this we don't really explore is Instagram. I'm not on Instagram. I'm never there, so there's probably a whole other world of material there that I'm missing. I basically use Twitter, a little bit of Facebook, although very little Facebook nowadays. Mostly all Twitter, but yeah, Instagram.
What's with the TikToks?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's spreading on the TikToks.
Well, that's the other point.
We didn't even. We were all over it with the Maddow thing. It didn't even occur to us until somebody told us you're all over TikTok.
Yeah, the Maddow intervention was big on TikTok, huge on TikTok. We challenged Marianne for the TikTok throne. Yeah, and apparently. We were huge there. That got a lot of circulation there. And yeah, we didn't even think to check. Never mind post it. We didn't even think to check TikTok. All right.
There are certain platforms like X, like TikTok. It's just very obvious to me when you go on there how much it's designed to stimulate the centers of your brain that are going to keep you looking at it. And I don't want to spend my time that way. So I tend just not to go on those platforms very much.
Yeah. I'm never on TikTok, and almost really never on Instagram either. But we should take a look.
Facebook is designed to be addictive, but Facebook is really the 1.0 version of addicting the brain to social media. It's pretty easy to walk away from it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because it's more text-based, and organized like that. Okay, folks, I believe that is everything we have for you this morning. So we want to thank you guys very much for being here. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com. You can become a paid subscriber there or a free subscriber. We hope that you guys follow us wherever you can, including Twitter @DoDissidents and on Rumble. We have a big Rumble crowd today, and we have a nice YouTube crowd today as well. But it's really important that you follow us in more than one place. You know, Richard Medhurst kept saying that over and over again to his audience. You have to follow me on Rumble, have to follow me on Rumble, have to follow me on Rumble. And it wasn't for no reason, because he got demonetized on YouTube. And he said, see, now this is why I've been telling you that. So let's get out in front of whatever tricks the Alphabet Corporation has up its sleeve. And let's follow us on Twitter and Rumble and Substack. Even if you cannot join as a paid member on Substack, you can join for free. That is a newsletter that lets you know when and where we will be streaming next. And obviously, we are on Locals. So Locals, same thing as Substack. You can join as a free member or as a monthly supporter. People who contribute monthly on Locals have access to the same perks as the Patreon and the paid Substack members. So please figure out a way to get in touch with us. Even if you can't send us any money, please figure out a way to get in touch with us on a platform that is not this one here on YouTube, just as a fail-safe. That is hugely important. We cannot stress that enough. You know, doing segments like the ones we did today do not come without risk. And so, yes. But, you know, we're not going to not do them for that reason. But we just need you guys to help us create a backup plan for that reason, right? Let's take one more from Bonzo Beans. Oh, look. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so it made it to you. Good. I was a little nervous about international shipping. Your T-shirts with the cartoon logo have arrived all the way over in Switzerland. Good to know. Will be worn with pride. Good. I was a little nervous about the international shipping because the shipping does take a little while now. I'm hoping it's just because it's the first print through. You know, so I'm hoping once they have the design and print saved in their system, they'll be able to blast them out quicker. But that's good to know. That's good to know. And if you're on social media, snap a picture and show us some love on there. We'd like to see you wear it well. All righty, guys. Well, thank you very much. We got one more super chat here on the way out. Laugh. Ellen, thank you for your input last night. Yes, Ellen called into the Patreon show last night. It was a great call. I'm forever telling people to actually read Marx and Freud, these two being the Jews. Yeah. Too many read books about these two in particular, but not the work itself. Well, thank you for that, Laugh. And Kuzetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99. Those Raytheon ghouls, it's just business. It's not personal, Sonny. Yeah, indeed.
It's strictly business.
Strictly business. Strictly business. Remember that.
That's a message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
Exactly. Alrighty, folks. We want to thank you very much for being here this morning. Appreciate you all very much. We will be back. Man, we did 3 shows in a row, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That was tough. We get tomorrow off, and then we will be back Sunday night here, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and on Rumble. Follow us everywhere you can. I know it's a lot of emails, but trust me, it's worth it. DoDissidents.substack.com, Locals, Patreon, you know the deal. Thank you guys all very much for being here.
You know the thing.
You know the thing, right? You know the thing. Thanks all for being here this morning. Have a great rest of the day, and we will see you back here Sunday night. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.